Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Just Law on IQRA TV. This is the second part to the show. Just before our break, we were looking at how you can make a successful indefinite leave to remain application. More specifically in relation to those who are here on a spouse visa. And I explained that initially spouses now get typically a 2.5-year visa from their home country in order to join their husband or wives here in the UK. So they initially get a 2.5-year visa, then after 2.5 years you apply to extend that visa, and then ultimately after a total of 5 years in the United Kingdom they are able to apply for indefinite leave to remain. And I was just going through the mandatory documents that need to be submitted when making an indefinite leave to remain application. Documents such as, these are absolute mandatory documents, they have to be submitted, the correct version of the application form, correct passport size photographs, a original passport even if it may be expired, and then we're looking at the fees, the right fee has to be paid, etc. So there are certain mandatory requirements that need to be fulfilled, and as long as you get the mandatory documents in, your application is considered to be a valid application. What I want to go on to look at is what are the things that you need to do, what are the actual requirements that you need to fulfill in order to successfully apply for indefinite leave to remain. Now, what are the other things that you will be required to do? And anybody who's on a spouse visa here would have gone through a similar process before, which is that they would be required to enroll their biometrics. Essentially all that is going to a nominated post office where your fingerprints will be taken, their digital fingerprints are taken digitally, and a digital photograph will be taken as well. So that's typically what's referred to as enrolling your biometric information. So no doubt when somebody's here already on a spouse visa, they've extended once in the UK, they've been through that process already, they will need to go through that process again when they apply for indefinite leave to remain. So that's the other mandatory requirement, and generally speaking the way the Home Office works is that the Home Office, after the documents have initially been checked or the money's been taken, will write to you and say, look, you've got 15 working days to go to a post office and have your biometric information enrolled. So it's 15 working days, so it's actually 3 whole weeks. Now, if you don't do that when you're required to, what the Home Office will then do is write to you again and say that you now have another 10 working days, 2 weeks, to enroll your biometrics. Now, as long as you get the biometrics done within the time limit, either within the first 3 weeks or within the 2 additional weeks that they provide you with, it's fine. But if you don't get it done in that time, again, as I said before, they will consider your application as an invalid application and actually reject your application. So that could cause real difficulties for you. And as I said before, with any future applications, because your application has been rejected, they will consider you as an overstayer. So potentially that could be quite problematic. So they're essentially the sort of mandatory requirements which need to be fulfilled. Now, what do you need to do in terms of meeting the requirements for indefinite leave? But typically the sort of main requirements, let me just outline the main requirements and then let me deal with what actually are the specific requirements that need to be fulfilled. The main requirements is that, look, this is a spouse application at the end of the day, so it's based on the husband and wife living together. So you will normally have to demonstrate that you are still in a relationship which is subsisting. So you have to demonstrate really that you're living together at the same address, and we'll come on to deal with the kind of documents which need to be submitted in order to fulfill that requirement. But the requirement is that you are in a subsisting relationship. That's one of the main requirements. The second main requirement is that the financial requirement is also met. So we've looked at the financial requirement before. Typically, although there are exceptions to it, there are other ways of meeting the financial requirement. Typically you need to be earning £18,600 per annum, and because both parties are in the UK, both their incomes can be taken into account. So the husband's income, wife's income, both those different sets of incomes can be taken into account in meeting the 18,600 requirement. And I'll look at that in a greater detail later on. And then finally, the other requirement that needs to be fulfilled is that the English requirement, which is that previously the English requirement would have been A2 at the extension stage. At this stage, at the indefinite stage, the requirement is that you need to have passed a B1 test in English. So it's a slightly higher test in English that needs to be submitted. So essentially there are three main requirements that the Home Office will look at: the relationship, the finances and English. They will look at accommodation, etc., but in reality they're normally not significant matters when it comes to indefinite leave to remain applications. The whole focus is really on the relationship, finances and the English language and knowledge requirement. So that's the key requirements that need to be fulfilled. Now again, obviously because it's a indefinite leave application based on the marriage, you will again need to submit the marriage certificate, which has been submitted at the initial stage when the initial visa was granted, submitted at the extension stage, and again at the indefinite stage that will need to be submitted as well. That shouldn't really cause any difficulties. But let's look at the first main requirement, which is the relationship. And again, initially when the spouse application was applied for, there was a similar requirement. We'll look at that in greater detail after we've taken our call. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum, brother.
Thank you, bhai, for calling. What's your question?
Brother, my question is, I just want to know, because I'm going to call my wife and kid over from abroad.
Okay, all right.
From Pakistan, and what is...
Sorry, the call's been dropped. I think the caller was asking about possibly how they can call their wife and child over from abroad. So sorry, we do apologize. We've had a slight problem in our control room, or either there's a problem with your call, your end. So please do call again and we'll look at that in greater detail. Now, just before that call, we were looking at the relationship requirement. So this is a requirement which was, sorry, I think the call is back. Let's take the call. Let's try again. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Well, Islam, brother, sorry about that. I just got off, yeah.
No problem.
So I just want to know what documents and what do I need to do.
Okay, is it a wife and child that you'll be calling?
Yeah, child abroad as well. So
okay, and are you working in the United Kingdom or are you self-employed? What's your?
No, I'm working at the moment.
You're working. You're employed, are you at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been with the employer?
I've been with him for over 4 years.
Okay, about 4 years. And in terms of your wife and child, how long have you been together?
I'm married now, just going towards 2 years.
2 years. And have you ever applied before, or is this going to be the first application that you're going to be making?
My first application, because I stayed abroad for a while.
All right, okay, all right, okay. That's fine. And just a couple of more things that let me just clarify. Has your wife passed her English test in her home country?
She's doing all her side, just my side now.
Or is it just your side? Basically waiting for you to sort your documents out. Okay, fantastic. I think you've given me enough information there. Let me then run through very quickly the kind of documents you need to get together. But thank you very much for your call. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's just deal with that and then go back to our topic later on. Now, the call is asking, has a wife and child in their home country? What are the requirements? And in one of the shows we've looked at that in greater detail. Let me just run through it very quickly. So if we break it down in terms of what the wife will have in the home country, there'll be a TB certificate, an English certificate, the marriage certificate, and a copy of her passport. So we need to get hold of that. And because the child is applying as well, we'll need a copy of the child's birth certificate that will need to be submitted, and obviously we'll need to get the child's passport as well, which will need to be submitted as well. So there are some mandatory documents which you get together from the home country: TB certificate, English certificate, a child's birth certificate, both mum and child's passport, and the marriage certificate. So try and get hold of those. And then if you look at, what are the main requirements? Main requirements again is, are you married and in a proper relationship? How do you demonstrate that? Are you working properly in the UK? Got the right income for a spouse application? And what's the situation with the accommodation? So essentially, they're the broad areas that we need to look at. So in terms of the relationship, you know, you've got a child, fantastic. That's a really very good indicator that this marriage is subsisting and is genuine, of course. So you would submit documents such as telephone records where you've been talking together, messages together, you know, what else you've been WhatsApp messaging, etc. You'll submit that, print all that off, and if you've been back to Pakistan to see your wife and child, photographs together, etc. Your wedding photographs. So that normally demonstrates the relationship. As far as the income is concerned, you'd be normally, you know, you've said you've been working for a while, and hopefully meeting the 18,600 requirement. So you'd be submitting a letter from the employer, 6 months wage slips, 6 months bank statements. You know, you'd make sure they're in the proper format, it's all up to date, and it shows you've got the right level of income as well. So it's your employment letter, 6 months wage slips, and your 6 months bank statements. So that's your income requirement, which is to be fulfilled in that way. And then finally, accommodation. Again, in previous shows, we've looked at it in greater detail. We need to demonstrate if it's your own house, demonstrate it's your own house. You've got enough space in the house, you need to get a property inspection report, etc. If you live in somebody else's house, you'll probably need to get a letter from the owner as well, confirming that your wife and child can live at the property. So essentially, what we're doing is certain documents your wife and child will have in their home country, and then you've got the relationship documents, income documents, and accommodation documents that you need to focus on and get together. So hopefully that gives you a broad overview of the kind of documents that we do need to get together. Now, just coming back to what we were looking at before, which is making a indefinite leave application based on somebody who's here as a spouse. Now, what I wanted to deal with is to deal with the relationship issue and what kind of documents do we need to submit for that. But let's just take the next call before we deal with that.
I just want to ask him because somebody asked me.
Yeah. Hi, you're live on air. Assalamu alaikum. So if you ask me, what's your question?
Listen to me first.
Okay, fire away.
Her relative has business all over the world.
Okay.
But he wants to come and settle in Leicester.
Okay. Okay.
So she was asking me to ask any solicitor what is the, how can he apply to move here.
Okay.
Still he will having business all around the world,
okay.
But he likes to stay here.
I understand. What kind of business do they have around the world? Just give us a rough idea.
I didn't ask.
Okay.
I didn't ask them.
Okay. There are look, in essence, there are going to be two main ways of coming to the United Kingdom for like a business person. One is, let's say they've got a big business, for argument's sake, let's say it's in Pakistan. So they've got a big business in Pakistan somewhere, and it could be an IT business, it could be a clothes business, it could be anything. Now, if they want to set up something similar in the United Kingdom, it may be possible to come on a visa which allows you to set up a similar business in the United Kingdom. There is a visa called a sole representative visa, so which allows you to set up a similar business to which you operate abroad in the United Kingdom. Now, the only problem with that visa is that you can't come to the United Kingdom under that visa if you're sort of the main owner of the business. It's only for people who are at a senior level within the business or own 10-20% of the business, not for the actual owner to come to the United Kingdom. So that's one route, which is to come here and set up a similar business as a sole representative. The other route, which is what people normally go for, which is an entrepreneur visa. For that...
sorry for interruption. I remember something. She says at the moment she's living in Dubai.
I understand. Okay. 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 That's fine. So let's say they want to set up a business here. And you can't qualify under the sole representative rule. They want to set up a business here. If they've got savings of £200,000, it's possible. It's very possible for them to be able to come to the UK and establish a business here in the UK. The main requirement is that you need savings of £200,000, and the reason for that is they want you to bring that money into the UK use that money to establish and run a business in the United Kingdom. So if they've got that level of savings, then it's possible that they can come to the UK on an entrepreneur visa, basically to run a business in the UK. So that's very, very possible. Now, they're the two main routes to the United Kingdom. In the vast majority of these kind of cases where you've got business people, they do come under this entrepreneur visa with £200,000 to start up or invest in an existing business in the UK. Apart from that, it's difficult to fall into any other routes for somebody who is a business person and is looking at, you know, running a business in the UK in the near future. I don't know whether that gives you a broad overview of what the options are. If you need further details, I can give you information on the phone, or you can leave your number with the control room, and I can then, you know, give you more details later on off air. But thank you very much for your call. We'll take our next break and we should be back in the next few minutes.